I'm trying to think about if I can tell you this. No, it's not a spoiler to tell you Percy ages over time.
Not at all. I would assume he does. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I am the titular Newest Olympian. I am a 29-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. I'm reading them now for the very first time to see if this is a book series that we as a society have been sleeping on. But I'm not on this quest alone. I am joined by one of my bestest buds in the whole wide world, someone who is a groomsman in my wedding, and we've spent many years nerding out about many things, but now we get to also nerd out about Percy Jackson, which makes me very excited. It's Stephen Parra. Stephen, how's it going?
Hey, Mike, it's awesome. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here today. From the moment you said you wanted to do this podcast, I was getting excited for this moment of the book. And then when you asked me to pick whatever chapters I wanted to be here, I was like, oh, wait, I could just do these chapters with Mike.
Yeah.
And it's even better.
Well, you were the first of my friends that I knew had read the books. I learned that you read these books before I knew Johnny read them. So I gave you the same treatment that I gave Johnny with Potterless, which was, hey, you get to call dibs on whatever chapter you want, because I think it's very fun to talk with people that I have a great emotional connection with about a very emotional part of the book. And you very humbly were like, is it too much if I take chapters 19 and 20 because they're the two best ones? And I said, no, that is exactly what I wanted you to do. So this episode, we'll be talking about chapter 19 as much as we can, because there's so much that happens in it, we might run out of time. But yeah, these are two incredibly action-packed chapters that we'll be talking about over these next episodes. But before we get into them, what is your history with Percy Jackson? What's your fandom? How did you get into reading these books?
I guess to start off, I would say I am actually from San Antonio myself.
Huge expert cred here. Big Uncle Rick expert here.
Oh my gosh. Well, you want more cred than that. Let's see, Mike. You have a friend who actually read these as a kid-ish, I'm from San Antonio, and for the past few years, I've actually been living on Long Island.
That's very true.
I feel like you'd find a hard-pressed person who hasn't had some more first-hand experience for a lot of things that are going on in these books.
And you do only eat blue food as well, now come to think of it.
Oh, yeah. As everyone can see on this podcast, I'm wearing a blue shirt today, too. But yeah, funny enough, I got into Percy Jackson because my girlfriend at the time in high school actually showed me the books. I was always a big Greek mythology nerd after watching, Disney's Hercules, as most of us were. But I remember one of my friends running up to me in elementary school being like, dude, they have mythology books in the library.
Oh, you're such a nerd. I love it.
I know. There's more to the story. And so I used to devour those books when I was little. And then I told that story to my girlfriend in high school. She was like, oh, I got a book you have to read. And it was The Lightning Thief. And then I proceeded to marathon through the first 4 Percy Jackson books in a matter of weeks. And then my girlfriend and I ended up breaking up just in time for me to have to buy my own copy of The Last Olympian, which I read at 17 years old, which was about, I think, on target with where Rick was hoping the books would go, I think.
Nice. Cool.
So you've talked about us maybe sleeping on Percy Jackson or him having a target demographic for younger kids, but I think it really took a Harry Potter sort of course, and it seemed very age appropriate for me by the time I finished.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. I'm also realizing that you are more qualified because I believe you are the first guest I've had on the podcast that has also played Hades the video game, which I do talk about in every single episode.
Yes, I have played Hades the video game.
So now when I explain that inevitably at some point in this episode, you will understand. I won't have to describe it, but I probably still will for all the listeners at home. Still waiting on Supergiant Games to sponsor the pod / come on the pod.
Absolutely. Supergiant, come on the pod. And just a note to all you listeners, if you think that he talks about Hades the video game a lot on the podcast, in his personal life, it is just as much, if not more.
When I was in the heyday of playing it, you and I would text about that nonstop. And there was a time, it was COVID world and stuff, where me, you, and Chet, one of our other very good friends, were all just hanging out at a park. And I believe we just sat on picnic blankets and talked about Hades for 2 consecutive hours. And that was, we hadn't seen each other in months. We didn't catch up about our lives. We just talked about the video game and how much fun it was. And that's where our nerdiness lies.
Yes. That's also when you asked me to come on the pod.
Heyo.
It was a good day.
And now we are here. So without further ado, I think we should get right into chapter 19, which is called We Find Out the Truth, Sort of, which the chapter titles never disappoint. This one is not necessarily ridiculous, but for it to begin with, we find out the truth, and then the caveat of sort of, suspense master Rick / Percy Jackson.
So good, so fitting. I love Rick.
So fantastic. So where we last left our heroes, they had just gotten past Cerberus the dog. Annabeth was sad about leaving Cerberus behind. And now we are getting into more of the underworld. They just went through the easy death line. And narrator Percy starts with the following quote, which is a pretty great setting of the scene. I already felt like Rick has done a very good job of making it easy for the reader to visualize the settings. But once we've gotten into the underworld, I feel like it is really ramped up because he has more to play with. Because he's not just describing New Jersey or Denver or St. Louis. It's like he's in a playground now because now it's fictional and he can do whatever he wants. And now he can really spice it up. And I feel like he has. So the quote from narrator Percy says, "Imagine the largest concert crowd you've ever seen. A football field packed with 1 million fans. Now imagine a field 1 million times that big, packed with people, and imagine the electricity has gone out and there is no noise, no light, no beach ball bouncing around over the crowd. Something tragic has happened backstage. Whispering masses of people are just milling around in the shadows, waiting for a concert that will never start. If you can picture that, you have a pretty good idea of what the fields of Asphodel looked like." And that is such a good way to set the stage.
Oh, yeah. It's so masterful. And it's not just the visual of it all, but so much the vibe. Like, he caught an emotion so well.
For sure. Yes. You can see it. You can feel it. You can almost hear it if you've ever been to a concert where A, there's a lot of people, or B, there's the silence before the act comes out or whatever it is. It really makes it feel like you're there. And it's just phenomenal writing. It's very impressive.
Absolutely. But, something bothers me about it, though.
What does?
They've been down there for probably, thousands of years. You'd think they'd just find a way to entertain themselves at a certain point.
Maybe it's a situation where you don't realize how long it's been. Maybe time is a question mark down there. But yeah, I would imagine in the Asphodel Fields, because the earlier description of it was Grover put the entire state of Kansas on blast by saying it was like hanging out in an empty Kansas cornfield. I feel like after some time, you'd be able to come up with something. I don't know. We've all had to deal with, the power's out. What are we going to do to pass the time? It's too dark to even read a book without straining my eyes. What are we going to do? You find a way. You and I have gone through Texas hurricanes where the power's out for a week at a time or longer, and you have to figure out something to do in between your ice cold showers that you take with buckets.
Yeah. I mean, Duck, Duck, Goose, people. Kids have figured this out years ago.
It would be very funny if it's a bunch of high school / college games. Like there's a bunch of spirits playing Mafia or One Night Werewolf, whatever it is now. That type of game. People are just playing car driving games that you do to pass the time. Punch Buggy, Marry My Cows, all that kind of stuff.
Amazing. Yeah. Or just maybe a couple of spirit improv troupes,
Ooh. Spirit improv, spirit acapella, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the Asphodel Fields are just like college kids passing time now. I like this headcanon we've created.
I want that for them. I want a better afterlife than what we're shown by Rick.
So it's black everywhere. There is a tall, cavernous ceiling filled with stalactites. And I was today years old when I learned that it was stalactites and not stalactites. I've been mispronouncing this word my entire life. I don't think I've ever seen it written out before, but I could have sworn there was a G in there and not a CT.
You're making me open my book now. Are you serious?
Did you also think it was stalactites?
I read this yesterday. Are you kidding me?
We both graduated college. Stalactites. Yeah, stalactite with a C. I'm going to Google stalactite and see what happens. Google says, did you mean stalactites?
I mean, I am a product of the Texas public school system, so I have an excuse. I don't know if you do.
Here we go. Here's the problem. It is stalactites and stalagmites. So the ones on the ground are stalagmites, but the ones on the ceiling are stalactites. I thought they were both G's. I just thought it was stalagmite and stalactite, which do both sound like Pokemon.
They do. I was going to make us.
Nerds.
We are so insane. All right.
This is going to be a great episode.
Hell yeah.
So there are stalactites, wild, But Percy tries to look for familiar faces in the crowd to see if he recognizes any of the spirits, but he struggles to do so because the faces of the spirits shimmer when he looks at them. And this is similar to the vibe that we had with the spirits in the lobby. So he can't really make out what they look like, but he can see that they look angry and confused. Spirits will come up to him, they try to talk to you, but their voices sound like chatter, just indistinct chatter, which is my favorite thing when you watch something with subtitles. And indistinct radio chatter is my favorite subtitle thing. So they make indistinct radio chatter, and then they get frustrated once they get the sense that you can't understand them, and then they leave frustrated, sad, dejected, etc. I think that's an interesting way to do the spirits. I don't really know if it's because they are demigods. I would assume that's the case, or maybe that's part of the Asphodel punishment, is that no one can recognize each other, and maybe that's why they don't have an improv troupe in anything, because they can't talk to anyone. But I'm wondering if this is just a alive versus dead thing, or if this is just how the entire fields work for everyone there, no matter what your status is.
I really hope that it's an alive versus dead thing, only because the fields of Asphodel, it's not a punishment.
Right.
It's just also not a reward.
Yeah, it's the middle ground.
Yeah. I think the most similar thing we can look to it in terms of, like, I guess, Christianity is like purgatory.
Right.
Which I guess is more a Catholic concept than just all Christian. But regardless, this sort of not great, not bad place.
Yeah, a little different because purgatory is supposed to be like a waiting ground until you go up to heaven. At least if I'm remembering my K through 12 Catholic school teachings. Apologies to my professors.
You know more than me.
But I also think you could consider it like, if anyone's seen The Good Place, what do they call it? The medium place?
Yeah.
It's like that, where it's not good, it's not bad, you're just kind of there. And I hope it's not a punishment thing. I
guess to me, an eternity of not being able to talk to anybody would be terrible.
Yeah.
That would probably be my field of punishment. So I feel like it can't be that way, I mean,
right.
That would be cruel to me. I want to live in the Rick Riordan universe that has spirit improv troupes. That's all I'm saying.
I think that's fantastic. At the very least, get an improv troupe at the camp. We should get a Camp Half-Blood improv team going.
Oh, yeah.
Percy's clearly gifted. He could do it.
What would the name be of the Camp Half-Blood improv troupe?
The problem with improv team names is the best ones are the ones that just mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
An improv team name, there's an inverse relationship with trying to make the name make sense and it being good. For example, I was on the improv team at Rice. It was just called Spontaneous Combustion. I guess spontaneous, similar to improv, but that's where it starts and ends. No one exploded at Rice. So that's not the reason behind the name.
I will say, though, you guys were fire.
Oh, very good.
Hey.
And you were the best audience member because you would always give the best suggestions, whether you were sober or not so sober.
True.
You were always good at yelling things loudly that were fun to improvise, as opposed to everyone that just loved to yell obscenities, which are always the worst improv suggestions. Absolutely the worst. Now, the other improv teams I've been on, I had a good named one in San Francisco. Our team was called Efficient Office Practices because in San Francisco, there's a lot of tech bro stuff. And someone was complaining about that verbiage being used in some sort of meeting they had. And we decided that would be a great improv name. So I feel like if they just pick something out of left field, that would be great. But if we wanted to do something, maybe because they talk about the godly impulses, maybe something like that. I don't know if there's a technical term or if they switch it up every time, but some sort of play on the demigods having these impulses, the battle instincts, maybe something in that regard as a nod to, oh yeah, that time where we kind of do stuff quick on our feet. Now we're doing it for laughs instead of to keep us alive in battle.
Yeah. Or we could just call them the godlings instead of the groundlings.
Could be that.
I like yours better, though.
I think it works, but, we could still work.
Godly impulses.
Ooh.
This isn't important.
This is very important, Stephen.
Okay, sorry. This is the most important thing we're going to talk about today.
So Percy sees a line of spirits headed towards the fields of punishment, and these fields look rough. There is lava, there are minefields, there's barbed wire all around, so pretty drab. Narrator Percy describes it further, quote, even from far away, I could see people being chased by hellhounds, burned at the stake, forced to run naked through cactus patches, or listen to opera music. Very good Uncle Rick writing as a 12-year-old joke here. That's fantastic. I'm a big fan of this.
It's such a good dig.
I want to know, and I guess this can continue to add to my list of very serious interview questions that I will ask Uncle Rick if he ever comes on the pod. But I wonder if he dislikes opera music or if this is just a 12-year-old would hate it. Because Uncle Rick's taken some shots at stuff, and I want to know if this is him living vicariously through the character or if he's just putting himself in the mindset of a 12-year-old boy.
Oh, absolutely. And I need you to ask that question because it's the same one I had. But I am obsessed with the idea that opera music is part of the Fields of Punishment. Because, like, do they have speakers down there? Or is it like a live performance?
I mean, yeah, maybe that could be the punishment for people who were opera performers. Their personal hell is you perform an opera, but you get no applause at all.
Oh, yeah.
So that could be their punishment.
And the one guy's at the back like, you suck! Or,
just constantly being heckled the whole time.
I hate this!
Imagine someone heckling at an opera concert. That'd be ridiculous. So Percy also sees Sisyphus, which is someone that I know from mythology and also Hades, the video game. And of course, you see him. He's the classic guy who has to push the boulder up the hill. He also sees worse tortures that he doesn't even want to describe. And my first thought here was, the classic J.K. Rowling, where instead of actually writing something cruel, you just say, it's so cruel that you can't put it into words. But then I realized this actually makes sense in this case because this is a first-person narrator. Percy is reiterating the story to us. And if he was 12 or a similar age when he is the age of the narrator, I don't know how far in the past it is, this would make sense for him to say, as a boy that went through this, I'd rather not talk about that stuff. Whereas in Harry Potter, with the third-person omniscient narrator that sometimes knows what Harry knows and sometimes knows more than what Harry knows, that didn't make as much sense to me when the narrator would say, oh, it's so bad, I can't tell you. You could. I understand maybe why you won't, because it's a younger audience, it's a YA series, I get it, but this actually made sense. So at first I thought, oh, come on, Uncle Rick. But then I thought, you know what? No, I actually support this choice because Percy's a kid.
Absolutely. You know, what I appreciate so much about these books is how rich Percy is as a character, as our narrator.
Yeah.
It reflects exactly what you said. It just rolls right back into Percy being Percy. It felt organic to me. And sometimes less really is more.
Yeah, I think it works. And the point you just brought up totally makes sense because Percy is the narrator. Even when he's just describing stuff, the way in which he tells the story gives us more insight to him as a character. He tells us his internal thoughts. So I think that's why after such a short period of time, even just a couple chapters into the book, I was so on board with Percy because it's almost as if he's a character in the book twice. Because you have Percy the character, you have narrator Percy. They're both incredibly lovable in different ways. They have slightly different vibes, but then they're still similar in that they're both very snarky. You get snarky quotes from Percy. You get snarky digs from the narrator when the narrator says, I wanted to say this, but I didn't. So yeah, I think it really goes a long way. And just like you said, it felt organic. I think this felt natural. It felt like an extension of the character that has been established because Percy doesn't like to press people on uncomfortable conversations. So yeah, he wouldn't want to describe something that he found to be incredibly uneasy to see.
Absolutely.
So Percy then sees Elysium, which is also a level in Hades, the video game, and it looks lovely. In the middle, there is a gorgeous blue lake with island resorts. This is called the Isles of the Blessed with a T, and this is a place for folks who've chosen to be reborn 3 times and achieved Elysium all 3 times. I am very excited to learn more about this when I talk to Dr. Moya in between books, because this sounds really cool. And I would love to hear a story about someone who was going for their 3rd Elysium, but then something went wrong. I want to know if there are famous characters who have done this. This is a very cool concept. It just kind of got sprinkled in, and I was devastated that this was the only thing we learned about it, because it's such an interesting concept.
Oh, yeah. You could probably write a whole book series about that.
Right? And maybe they will. Who's to say?
Maybe they will. I don't know. I only read the first core series. Sorry, everybody. I haven't read Heroes of Olympus yet.
How dare you?
I know. I've been a little busy.
What? Becoming a doctor? That's not anything.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm in medical school.
Yes. Hello, Stephen. Big Dr. Pants. So if anything happens here, or if anything medical comes up, you're the guy to lend your expertise.
Sure thing.
So Percy thinks that This place is where he wants to go when he dies. Annabeth confirms that Elysium is what it's all about. It's the place for heroes. But Percy gets sad once he compares and realizes how few people there are in Elysium versus how many are in the Asphodel Fields or even in the Fields of Punishment. It just depresses him to see how few people did good in their lives. And yeah, that's a harsh reality, especially to face at 12. There's rude awakenings that have happened at many points in my life, and to have that at 12, that sucks a lot.
For sure. I do want to take one step back real quick.
Sure.
Just an important note about Elysium. I just feel like it's another yeehaw moment for Uncle Rick here.
Oh.
And that the first smell, I guess, that Percy relates to Elysium is, in fact, barbecue. Once again.
It smelled like an H-E-B tortilla. I mean, H-E-B tortillas slap really hard.
Pretty good. That would be in my Elysium for sure.
If you ever find yourself at an H-E-B, get the mitad, e-mitad, the half corn, half flour. It's all the benefits of corn with all the structure of flour tortilla. It's fantastic. Ugh.
They are wonderful. If you just find yourself in an HEB, you did it right. You won.
Mm-hmm, you did.
Good job. It's the best place in the world.
It is. It's a good grocery store. We're recording this on November 18th. I will be flying home for Thanksgiving in 3 days. And I'm going to an HEB right away.
Oh, absolutely.
Picking up some of that HEB cerealology cereal, getting some of those horchata Rice Krispies. Oh, yeah, dude.
It is wonderful. This has been Texas Corner with Mike and Steven.
I was going to say, I wish this episode was brought to you by HEB. My God. Hello and welcome to this episode's Lightning Brief. First off, this episode is releasing on December 27th, 2021, so I just want to say happy holidays. Whatever you did, whatever you celebrated, whoever you were with, if you were just by yourself, whatever happened, I hope you had a good, fun, safe time. Second, wanted to give an update about transcripts for the newest Olympian. The first 10 episodes have transcripts up on the website. If you go to the individual episode pages for the episodes, there's a link to the transcript underneath. So if you want that, it is there. And I will continue to add more transcripts as our transcription team completes them. Third, a reminder that there will be no episode of the newest Olympian next Monday, January 3rd, taking it off for the holidays and January being a 5-Monday month. There will be a live show episode of Potterless. So if you still want to hear me nerding out about book stuff, you can check out that episode at potterlesspodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts by searching for Potterless. Fourth, earlier in this episode, Stephen and I were workshopping potential names for the Camp Half-Blood improv team, and after recording, Stephen realized the correct answer to this question, which is the Laugh-Bloods, and I'm genuinely sorry that we did not come up with this during the recording. Our apologies. We will try to be better in the future. And finally, I mentioned the holidays earlier. If you made a big old goof and you forgot to get someone a gift and you are thinking, my goodness, it's past the holidays. I cannot wait for shipping. Oh my goodness, the supply chain. Well, you know what doesn't have to get through the supply chain and is very nice and fun and nerdy and beautiful and instant? A Patreon subscription to the newest Olympian. Yes, you can give it as a gift. And you can say, hello, friend that is very nerdy and likes this niche podcast, or friend that I just think might enjoy a boy talking about things. You can always gift them access to the Newest Olympian Patreon. You can get access to that by going to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And speaking of that Patreon, I want to give a shout out to the newest members of our team. So shout out to our new Super God tier patrons, Nicole Kelly and Calypso. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Casey Renard, Curious Kit, Heart Attack 87, and James Audie. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, Shane and 404 Streamer Not Found. Also shout out to Zamzam Koheji for upgrading their pledge. And speaking of support, I want to thank Multitude for supporting us and having us as a part of the collective. If you're looking for other podcasts to listen to, Multitude has a whole bunch of them. They're all fantastic. And one of the ones that is fantastic, I'm very biased about it because I create the show. It's called Meddling Adults. Meddling Adults is a whodunit game show for charity hosted by yours truly, where two guests go head to head to solve children's mysteries from classics like Encyclopedia Brown, Scooby-Doo, and Shelby Woo. And actually recently we added to our merch store a replay of a live show that we did back in September where Kelly and Johnny battled it out to solve New York City-based mysteries, and it was an absolute hoot. You can check that out at meddlingadults.com/merch, and you can listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Meddling Adults. It's a fun show, it's wholesome, it's goofy, it's silly, it's a good time, and it helps charities. Every single proceed that this show brings in goes to charity, whether that's supporting on Patreon or buying merch, whatever. Any dollar that comes in that is a profit goes towards the charities that win across each season. So listen, laugh, and play along at meddlingadults.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, before we go, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors that make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcast boy. Some of these ads will be read by me, others won't. The ones that are not are locally inserted. So if you live in the North Pole, don't be surprised if you hear an ad about Santa's elves' working conditions. And once these ads are complete, we will get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. So the team makes their way further into the asphodel fields, and then they see the Furies flying overhead, which is something you never want to see. Grover is nervous and says, maybe we should check out Elysium first, guys? Love this. Love Coward Grover.
Grover's the best.
He's so good. Annabeth grabs his arm and says, come on, goat boy, which I am now fully on team. This is just playful nickname and not me wondering if this is gross just because I didn't like the way Chiron said it initially. But as I've read more and more, it does not feel like a dig. So I am past that. So this is just the affectionate nickname.
Okay, yeah. Because the last episode I heard was you and Johnny. And you were still kind of iffy on the goat boy thing.
I think I was just scarred by Harry Potter, where the wizards are like, we're the wizards and everyone else sucks. And I was just afraid that was happening again here. And also someone on the Facebook page made a very good point because someone brought up similarly, I think Mike might be overreacting with the goat boy thing, which I probably was. But also everyone else has read all of the books. So I don't know how Grover gets treated. So it's harder for me to be able to say, no, it's totally fine, because some of you other people listening may have read every book, and maybe Grover becomes king of Olympus in book 5. I don't know. Maybe Grover's the last Olympian. But
I guess we'll have to read and find out, bud.
Yeah, I
can't tell you that.
That's something I would hope listeners can keep in perspective. Is this is the same thing when I didn't like Dobby initially in Harry Potter, because in book 2, he's awful. But then, of course, he becomes incredible as the series goes on. So if I say some of these things, keep in mind, I have no idea what happens. So sometimes I have to do the initial check, and that's the case here. But yes, as it's gone on, just the affectionate nickname, we're all good here. And I've gotten the sense, as this book has gone on, that satyrs are treated equally. They don't seem like a subclass folk. So I am appreciative that Grover's getting the respect and the satyrs are getting the respect that they deserve, because they seem like they've got their right heads on their shoulders for sure. Annabeth grabs him, says, come on, goat boy. Grover yelps, and then, just as I knew was gonna happen, because I cannot trust the shoes and / or Luke farther than I can throw them, and I could probably throw those shoes pretty far. Grover yelps, and then the sneakers sprout wings. We've seen this happen once before when he was very happy in the casino, but now this is a worse version of that. Grover cannot get the shoes to calm down, despite him yelling Maya repeatedly. And I just wrote, I knew it, Luke, with 8 U's. Obviously, this wasn't a huge big guess of mine, because water messenger from mom, Nereid, said, don't trust the gifts. So it's not like I'm trying to do a lap around the studio here, but I couldn't trust the shoes, and now we see why. So Grover is flying away, feet first, which is not that feels like a terrible situation to be in.
Yeah, that's not going to be fun for anybody.
Not at all. Percy tries to grab him but fails to do so, so him and Annabeth chase after him, and they are yelling, untie the shoes! But thankfully, narrator Percy recognizes that this is a bit of a hard ask, very much an easier said than done thing. Narrator Percy says, kind of hard to do when you're flying upside down against your will. Yes, thank you. We love an appreciative and understanding narrator Percy.
Yeah.
Grover can't untie it, but he tries to do a sit-up mid-air to reach the laces, which also feels like quite the physical feat, but it's no use. They continue to chase after Grover, and as they are doing so, Percy starts to smell evil, and it makes him think of things he shouldn't know about. Blood spilled on an ancient altar, the foul breath of a murderer. And if this already sounded bad, it does get worse, because what's in front of them? It is the chasm from Percy's dreams. And now I'm thinking the shoes are part of the plan. They are trying to get the trio sucked into this chasm for whoever the deep voice and whoever the servant, I think it's Luke, is. And Grover is trying to do everything he can to not go into this chasm. He's clawing at the ground, but the ground is mostly gravel, so he's not really grabbing onto anything. But then thankfully, he bumps into a big rock. Sorry, Grover. I'm sure that hurt, but also it was fortunate. Bumps into a big rock. One of the shoes flies off. Grover is then able to anchor himself to the large rock. He was only 10 feet away from the chasm entrance before Annabeth and Percy are able to rescue him. They remove the other shoe, which does then kick them in protest before flying down the chasm. I like that even the shoes are sassy, and then they just kind of sit exhausted, but they can't rest there for very long because they hear a loud noise coming from the pit, so they start to run away.
I just love, I wrote the same exact note on the pit. I love that the right shoe has some sass.
It's great. I think it's very funny.
It's just wild. We have this action-packed scene flying through. We're all worried about Grover, and then Rick still finds some time to toss in some levity here by having the shoes come back and kick them in the head before it goes in the pit. It's just amazing.
For sure. And this is a point other guests have brought up in past episodes, is that even the action scenes don't feel out of place because this is a very funny book. I laugh out loud genuinely, not just to exhale out of my nose, genuine when I'm reading very often. So because there is funny moments in these action scenes, it feels like it's part of the book. And you're not teleported to a different world where it's Action Jackson instead of Percy Jackson.
For sure.
So Annabeth knows what is going on. It is the entrance to Tartarus, which, of course, is the first level in Hades. It is the farthest depths of the underworld. It is the most evil place. The evil voice is chanting. Percy uncaps Riptide, and the evil voice stops briefly, but then resumes. And Percy says magic after thinking the words are ancient. So I was wondering, is the deep voice here chanting the word magic, or is Percy believing that these are magic chants? I feel like the latter makes more sense.
That's how I read that passage, is that there's magic going on, not that that particular language is just saying magic, 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 magic.
The deep voice is just going magic, magic, magic. Which also still would be terrifying, but a very different vibe. I'm imagining some sort of indistinguishable Gregorian style chant of just, I'm realizing I was just about to do the Finding Nemo,
which could be terrifying in its own way.
Right. If we didn't have the context.
Yeah.
So the team just bolts out of there, and the wind starts pulling at their backs as if the pit is trying to suck them in. And they would have been screwed if they were closer, but they eventually struggle their way to the top of the tunnel, and they are back at the Asphodel Fields. Grover asks what the heck that was. Annabeth has a look on her face that Percy reads as her having an idea, and he thinks it's probably the same idea that she was too uncomfortable to share in the taxi, so he doesn't press on it. I respect Percy being a good friend, but this is now the second time that this has happened. I feel like the stakes might be high enough, Percy, where you could say, hello, Annabeth, I know that this is uncomfortable, but could you please maybe give us a theory, or at least tell us if it would change our decision-making based on what you think it is? Maybe he's assuming that she would speak up if it would change their thought process, because she has kind of made it seem a little bit like, if it's what I'm thinking it is, it's so bad that it doesn't matter. So maybe that's what he's assuming. But I feel like a brief check-in here could have been helpful, maybe. Or at least that's what I would have done in this situation.
Yeah, I think just with that, he's noticing Annabeth's got stuff going on. But at the same time, there are still pressing issues they have to solve. We're on a timer with the summer solstice coming so soon.
Right.
And so
yes.
I agree with what you're saying. Like, if it really mattered, Annabeth would tell him now. You know, it's sort of like a joke, like with the house is on fire, you don't stop to close the windows, sort of thing on your way out. It's not really worth it. And I think that's kind of what's going on right now.
For sure. So Percy sees ancient engravings of death as they continue their way through the fields. There is engravings of atom bomb gas mask wearing soldiers in a trench and African famine victims, and he wonders if these are prophecies that came true because they seem like very old engravings. And just when you thought the underworld wasn't scary enough, that's super scary.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's not cool at all. That's tough stuff.
Yeah. What most stuck out to me about that bit is I think just before that they passed by, like, Persephone's orchard of pomegranates.
Yeah, that's what they pass next, right?
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
I'll wait for you to tell us then. Yeah.
Sure. So then they pass through the Garden of Persephone, which is something in Hades, a video game, and it has multicolored mushrooms, poisonous shrubs, luminous plants, jewels, and her trademark pomegranates. It also has a bunch of Medusa garden items and statues, which I thought was a nice touch. But this felt like an intriguingly evil place where I know it's evil, but also sounds kind of cool. I mean, luminous plants, rainbow colored mushrooms. This feels kind of cool. Pomegranates? Who doesn't love a pomegranate?
I know. Well, you got to be careful with the pomegranates, Mike.
Right. I do know this because of Greek mythology.
Yes, this is because of mythology. I don't want to step on Moya's toes, but I think Percy explains it too. It's, if you eat any food in the underworld, you belong there.
Right. So Annabeth urges Percy to move, and he recognizes why. Despite the tempting smell of the pomegranates, he recalls Persephone's story, one bite of underworld food, and you become unable to leave. Percy grabs Grover just as he's picking one, which is just, it's such a good comedic moment. I love that these keep happening, and that's so funny. I can envision this being in a cartoon where you cut to Grover very slowly grabbing and then Percy just yanks him out of frame.
I know. And I love it so much too, Mike, because literally just before this, Grover was getting dragged by his feet into the pit of Tartarus. He's all scraped up from getting bumped up. And then the next thing he wants to is like, a juicy pomegranate. I want some.
Grover's a hungry boy. And as a fellow hungry boy, I can sympathize. And what better thing to have after a harrowing experience than a snack, and a healthy one at that.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm totally with it. I just love it so much. It's like, so I think as I get older and older, it's just, I love Grover more and more. Mm-hmm. I always liked Grover, but I know like when I was a kid reading these books, I felt a sort of kinship with Percy in the sense that I am also very stubborn and can get pretty angry when, I feel like I've been unfairly wronged or something like that. Mm-hmm. I always aspire to be as awesome as Annabeth is, but I just realized as an adult more and more that I just have big Grover energy. That's it.
Not taking unnecessary risks.
Yeah.
Want some snacks. Grover.
Yeah.
I would like to sit on the couch and eat snacks, please.
Live reasonably, eat food. Yeah.
It's honestly a great way to live.
Be a good friend.
Yeah, right? Be a good friend.
Right.
Don't risk yourself unnecessarily. Have good food. Bing, bang, boom.
Yeah.
Grover.
Big Grover energy.
Mm-hmm. So they see the House of Hades and approach. It has a bronze floor. It has no ceiling, which is weirdly a flex. I think that's so cool. You don't need one. It's completely unnecessary here. I dig it. Mm-hmm. The doorways are guarded by military skeletons, which does remind me of beloved character in Hades, Skelly. Mm-hmm. But unlike Skelly, they are not fun and jovial. They are absolutely terrifying because some of them have guns. I was not expecting that, especially because what we've gathered here so far in the PJO universe is that Greek stuff is usually ancient stuff. And when gods are on the surface, sometimes you get modern things like Ares having a terrifying motorcycle and stuff. But I felt like once we got to the underworld, everything was just going to be swords, spears, shields, etc. I was not expecting guns.
Yeah, not to mention rocket-propelled grenade launchers.
Exactly. I was already floored by guns, but then we learned some of them have RPGs too, which is a whole lot.
What threats are you facing down there that you need that?
Also, you're in a big cave. Feels like explosives when we've got giant stalactites is a bad combination.
But I guess if everything's already dead.
Right.
But then why do you need the weapons?
I guess in this case, in case heroes, demigods, alive people come on down, you need to blow them up? So Grover mutters, I bet Hades doesn't have trouble with door-to-door salesmen. Yes.
We're always here for the dad jokes.
So good. Percy notes that his backpack feels super heavy. And narrator Percy had been mentioning this a little bit since they got near the pit. It felt heavy, and now it feels worse. He wants to check it, quote, to see if I had somehow picked up a stray bowling ball. Great turn of phrase here. Mm-hmm. But Percy, as the narrator says, but this wasn't the time. And I wrote, all caps in my notes, are you sure? Because feels important, and as we will very soon learn, is a big deal. Mm-hmm. A huge deal. Percy suggests that they knock on the large set of doors, but a hot wind blows down the corridor and the doors swing open. So they enter, and it looks almost identical to what Percy saw in his dream, but the key difference is that the throne is filled, and it's filled by Hades. And here's the description. I love PJO Hades.
Oh, yeah. He's amazing.
Quote, he was the third god I'd met, but the first who really struck me as godlike. He was at least 10 feet tall for one thing, and dressed in black silk robes and a crown of braided gold. His skin was albino white, his hair shoulder length and jet black. He wasn't bulked up like Ares, but he radiated power. He lounged on his throne of fused human bones, looking lithe, graceful, and dangerous as a panther. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. And before reading this chapter, my thoughts were, I wonder if it'll be closer to Disney Hercules Hades or big muscle bob buff pants Hades, the video game Hades, big angry stepdad energy. And it's perfectly in the middle with like a hint of Voldemort. And it's so good. I like this. And we'll soon hear his quotes, which make me think it's more in the middle where you've got some of the quick-witted nature of Disney Hercules Hades.
Oh, yeah.
But man, this interpretation of Hades is good. I also like pointing out that he wasn't buff, but still feels really strong, because that's totally a thing that happens in life, in sports, in fighting. You don't necessarily have to be ripped to have power.
Absolutely.
And to radiate it. And Hades sounds terrifying.
Oh, yeah. I would have been quaking in my boots, let alone being a 12-year-old kid dealing with this. You know, it's wild.
Yeah, I really like it. Percy feels an inherent urge to obey him, but he snaps out of it. He realizes that this isn't an aura power like Ares has, but Hades just has this mesmerizing evil charisma, which really is on brand for what people say about notoriously evil leaders or bad people, is that they are just incredibly charismatic. So I like that that has come through in this depiction of Hades.
Absolutely.
So Hades just comes out, guns blazing, with his quotes here. "You are brave to come here, son of Poseidon," he says in an oily voice. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm guessing just like an evil suave is what I interpreted that as.
Because, like, I don't think they're going for, like, Snape voice, right? Like,
no.
You are brave to come here.
You are brave to come here, son of Poseidon. And also not Voldemort, like, you are brave to come here.
Come here.
But yeah, I feel like it would just be like a suave sort of, it's unnerving how calm he sounds maybe kind of thing.
Absolutely. That would be the scariest version of it, I think, right?
Right. Him not sounding angry, like an evil version of I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
I'm not mad, I'm just evil.
Right. Exactly. That is exactly what it is. So he continues, "After what you've done to me, very brave indeed. Or perhaps you are simply very foolish." Percy is mad nervous, but he steps forward and says, "Lord and uncle, I come with 2 requests." Percy!
I know, right?
Hey, how's it going? I got 2 things I need from you right now.
Not 1.
2. This is so fantastic. And Hades, in a perfect reply, just raises an eyebrow, which feels very much like a game respect game thing of just, okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, all right, Percy, what do you got? The narrator continues, "When he sat forward in his throne, shadowy faces appeared in the folds of his black robes, faces of torment, as if the garment were stitched of trapped souls from the fields of punishment trying to get out. The ADHD part of me wondered, off task, whether the rest of his clothes were made the same way. What horrible things would you have to do in your life to get woven into Hades's underwear?" This is such a good quote because, 1, terrifying clothes here. 2, it makes me think of when you play video games and you have cool clothes that have these magical effects where stuff goes over the clothes in an animated type pattern.
Oh,
cool
yeah.
that Hades is actually rocking this. The ADHD reference is very funny, but also from what people have described to me as I learn more and more about what it is like to live with it, this feels 1,000% on brand. Just to think, wow, cool, scary clothes. Oh, I wonder if everything's like that. Oh, I wonder if his underwear's like that. Oh, God.
Yeah. I remember rereading this chapter and getting to that point and like reading about his garments, like, man, I wonder what it's like to have to be his underwear. And then I got to the point where Percy thought the same thing. And it's like, I'd forgotten about that quote, but it was just like so on brand that it's like I jumped on the same joke.
It's so funny. It's such a fun line of thinking that you could definitely see the thought process of, and it's just very funny.
Yeah. It's like, how many boosts to his like intimidation roll do you think Hades gets just by wearing the robes?
Oh gosh, I feel like he's just rolling with advantage. He gets 5 dice rolls. I mean, those clothes alone, come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Hades is not amused. He tells Percy to speak, as it amuses him not to strike him dead yet. Oh.
I know. And for me, like, this is the moment where I feel like Hades shifts from being just like menacing Hades to diva Hades. Like, this is the shift.
Yeah.
It amuses me not to strike you down yet, but he's already losing his cool, and it's great.
And he's being scary and intimidating, not in the Ares approach where Ares really tries to put on the tough guy thing. Hades just very calmly says earth-shattering stuff.
Yes.
So Percy wishes that Persephone was in her throne, but it is vacant because it's summer and she's on the surface with Demeter, which I do know from, everyone say it together, the video game Hades.
The video game. One thing that the game does mess up, but I understand because it's a video game. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest. So there is a long part of the year where it's just supposed to be nice plants and sunny and nice to be in the world.
Right.
But in the game, it's just ice powers the whole time.
Yes. In the game, the story of it is that because she has lost Persephone, she is just doing only winter. It's very Frozen of them to make it eternal winter because she's grumpy.
Yeah.
But then also, you can't, I don't want to give spoilers away, but like they would have to program twice as many Demeter stuff if they had winter Demeter and summer Demeter.
Oh,
and then I guess spring and fall Demeter too, where I guess you just get pumpkin spice powers for autumn.
Hey, Supergiant, if you want some ideas for a DLC pack,
come on through. Yeah.
Text @Shub17 on Twitter.
My DMs are open. Slide in, baby. So Percy pleads with Hades not to start a war between the gods and instead to hand over the bolt so that Percy can give it to Zeus. And then it says, Hades' eyes grew dangerously bright. You dare keep up this pretense after what you've done? And Percy says, uncle, you keep saying after what you've done. What exactly have I done? And then the throne room shakes with a tremor. Debris falls, doors bust open, and loads of skeletons march in. Hades yells, "Do you think I want war, godling?" And narrator Percy, so good, says, I wanted to say, well, these guys don't look like peace activists, but I thought that might be a dangerous answer. Good job, Percy.
Good
Very smart
instincts.
thing not to say.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So Percy posits that Hades is the god of the dead, so wouldn't war expand his kingdom? And Hades says this is a common thought that my brothers have, and he refers Percy to the loads of spirits in the asphodel fields, asks rhetorically, do you really think I need more of these things? Oh, it's great.
I just love it so much. He goes on such a rant about the logistics of running the underworld.
Yes, he basically is just like an angry boss.
Yes,
it's so funny.
And this is where it really shifts to Hercules Hades for me, because he's just becomes this flamboyant, just like,
It's almost a mix of both, because in Hades the video game, a big thing is that Hades is grumpy about how much paperwork and stuff he has to do. He legitimately does paperwork. And
Yes.
there is the ghoul, ghostly equivalent of filing cabinets and stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he grumbles and grumbles about that. So yes, you get the troubles and struggles of that Hades, but you're right, the flamboyant and sassy nature of the Disney Hades. It's such a good character.
It is. For those listening at home, Mike and I are very much talking with our hands right now. We're doing a lot here as we're describing Hades.
If I wore a Fitbit, it would be saying that I was running a marathon right now.
Yes, I have racked up a few thousand steps, I think, just from the podcast.
Sitting down.
Yeah, sitting down. I got to imagine what this Hades like answering machine must be like. You know, actually, it's like, sorry, Lord Hades, we have like a 7-chariot pileup on the Zagreus Expressway.
I kind of imagine I recently was rewatching the first Spider-Man movie, and I feel like Hades would handle the phones like Jonah Jameson does, where he just picks it up and hangs up and tells people things and makes people leave his office. I feel like Hades would have that kind of energy. I also just imagine him as like a grumpy small business owner where he has to handle so many things, and he doesn't necessarily have a CEO, a COO, and all this stuff, and he's just frustrated with all of the people that he has to, herd the cats that are beneath him, and it all falls on his shoulders. And he can't delegate because he doesn't trust anyone.
I wonder how you even wind up an employee of Hades in the underworld. Is it like a punishment? Is it a reward?
I don't know. Maybe it's a way to save yourself from the fields of punishment. Maybe if you were evil, but you clearly have skills, he wants you. He will say, yo, I'll save you from the fields if you do my bidding. Maybe it's something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, Hades goes on to say that his kingdom is actually too large of late, given how the past century has gone. And makes sense. He complains that his expenses are too high to deal with it all. He used to be a rich god, but now he's not because he has to just pour so much. Now running the underworld has become a labor of love.
And who is he paying?
I don't know, but I guess he's going to apply for a PPP loan or whatever.
Would that mean that he's like under OSHA's jurisdiction too?
Oh,
if he's getting PPP loans?
The lore. Give us the fan fiction about just the business practices of Hades running the underworld, just the logistics.
Hey, I'm calling from OSHA again. You know, since you're zoned under Los Angeles, we still need to follow up on a few thousand violations we've seen.
Look, I know I'm under the state of California, but I'm not in the state of California.
I mean, people are going to die down there if you keep this sort of practices up.
Look, my tax dollars are paying for things I can't use, like buses and public transit. I don't go to public school.
Oh, man.
Now, Percy, in a very poor timing moment here, blurts out that Charon wants a pay raise. And I like that the way Hades gets mad here. He doesn't get mad at Percy. He kind of just screams out to the sky, "Don't get me started about Charon." He's so good. I love this Hades so much.
I know, it's so good. And it's like, so you know, this conversation has been going on for centuries between the two of them. And it's just that. Yeah.
I'm already expecting grave disappointment when I watch the Percy Jackson movies because I've heard they are horrible. Sorry, the Peter Johnson movies, because I know they are horrible and no one likes them. I'm worried that their representation of Hades won't hit this because this is so good. I'm afraid that they're going to cast someone who's going to try to be scary when really they should cast someone who is more often a beloved character, but would be interesting in an evil way. Similarly to when Tom Cruise was in Tropic Thunder, Tom Cruise is always a good guy, but then he is this foul-mouthed, horrible person, and it's so compelling. I feel like this Hades should be played by Stanley Tucci. It would be so fantastic because he would have the theatrics of it all, but still also could be intimidating and scary. I feel like he could pull it off.
Oh yeah, Stanley should be an awesome pick. You know, he definitely should get involved with the Peter Johnson franchise if it's possible. I think that's really good.
We'll see if the Disney Plus casting could be good. I also could see someone, maybe an Idris Elba, where normally he is suave and someone that you like. But if anyone's ever watched The Wire, Idris Elba can also be incredibly intimidating and very scary and just a boss, a lord. And I could really see someone like that. So I just think that having a casting of someone that is more beloved as opposed to just purely going evil, like don't cast Paul Giamatti. He's always the bad guy. That's too easy. You can't do that.
Oh man, I like that idea. Obviously I can't give you any answers, but I like that idea a lot.
I will be very intrigued to see who gets cast in the Disney Plus show. Mm-hmm. So Hades continues. He doesn't just say, "Don't get me started about Charon," because he does then get started about Charon. He says, "He's been impossible ever since he discovered Italian suits."
Exactly. It's just so perfect how this power facade just falls away the minute he goes...
It's so fantastic. Good. So Hades goes on to complain about all the problems that he has to solve himself. He complains about the commute. It's the stuff that he's complaining. It is so funny. It's one of those things where I feel like this is the Pixar movie thing where the adults are crying and laughing and the kids don't get it. Mm-hmm. This is something that maybe as a kid you don't get. But reading this at age 29, I was in tears. This is so funny for Hades to be complaining about just dad stuff.
Yeah. And like having to put in subdivisions. I just imagine like someone calling in from the Elysium Fields being like, hey, the margarita machine's busted. Can you send someone to like fix that?
Just have it on the rocks. It doesn't need to be frozen. Gah!
I mean, this is Elysium, right? Like this is supposed to be the best of the best. I mean, I guess it's not the Isle of Bless. Did they have a margarita machine?
Trying to think of an evil bartender or like a dead bartender that would be there, but I can't. Nothing's coming to mind. Hades continues his grumbling, saying that he doesn't need more subjects, and it's just him as a grumpy boss is so funny. Hades says he doesn't want this war. And Percy says, but you took Zeus's bolt. And Hades goes, lies! And Hades has his own theory. Hades says, you were the thief of the winter solstice. Your father thought to keep you his little secret, he directed you into the throne room on Olympus. You took the master bolt and my helm. And I thought, oh, his helm is missing? That's the other thing that the deep voice was talking about. What's going on? Hades continues, had I not sent my fury to discover you at Yancey Academy, Poseidon might have succeeded in hiding his scheme to start a war. But now you have been forced into the open. You will be exposed as Poseidon's thief, and I will have my helm back. This is a huge revelation, and I like that it was kind of just done. It wasn't a big scene made out of it. It was just dropped in the middle of this little tirade. And that's such a fun way to learn about something when you're reading, to go, oh, no. Oh, it was cool. I really liked it.
Yeah. I just love how much with Hades' tirade, like it reads so much like someone who has no one to talk to but himself, or people that can't disagree with him. And it's just this, no, you came to the winter solstice even though you didn't know you were a demigod until this summer, and you stole this. It's just so funny.
Hades has certainly rehearsed all of these lines in the evil shower where he goes, oh yeah, Percy's coming. And when he gets to the throne, I'll say this. And if he says this, I'll say this. But if he says this, I'll say this. You know, like we all do.
No, you know what? Hades is a god, and there's definitely like dead actors in Elysium. I could almost imagine like, hey, can I run this by you real quick?
Ooh, yeah. He practices dialogue.
Can we workshop this one?
Yeah. So Annabeth is shocked at this revelation and asks Hades if it's really missing. Hades is convinced that they're in on it all and they're just lying. They're toying with him here. Hades then goes on to say that he hasn't mentioned anything about his helm's disappearance because he didn't think anyone on Olympus would bother to help him anyway, and he didn't want word out that his most powerful weapon was missing. Makes sense? So Hades then searched for Percy himself, but when it became clear that Percy was coming to see him, he didn't stop Percy. This confuses Percy, and he asks, you didn't try to stop us, but... And Hades interrupts, saying, return my helm now, or I will stop death, which is intense, and he clarifies, that is my counterproposal. I will open the earth and have the dead pour back into the world. I will make your lands a nightmare, and you, Percy Jackson, your skeleton, will lead my army out of Hades. Absolutely terrifying, super chilling.
Oh, yeah. Just reminding us how powerful he is. I do want to take one little look back, though, because it's not just that he let Percy come to the underworld. The way he phrased it, I thought was so funny, because he's like, why do you think I allowed you to enter my realm so easily? And they're like, easily?
Yes. Percy's quite offended at that notion.
Are you serious?
I want to know what hard mode is, because my goodness, they have been through a lot.
Yeah.
But right now, before things get a little more intense, I think we're going to stop here. We are at time. So in the next episode, we will finish chapter 19 and we will continue chapter 20. But Stephen, thank you so much for joining on for this episode. I very much appreciate it. If people want to find you doing stuff on the internet, or if you have any other message to promote to the folks listening, what would you like to say? Where can people find you, etc.?
Thanks, Mike. There is one thing I do have to get out of the way. It's that all the thoughts, jokes, and opinions I've made are completely my own, and they don't reflect the thoughts or opinions of any medical school or hospital that exists.
Yay, that's fun. That's how you know you've made it in life, is when you have to put a disclaimer in front of your stuff for being a goofball on a podcast. We've made it! But aside from that, anything else if you would like to say or promote?
I've actually popped up on the internet a few times now at this point, so I definitely recommend checking out Meddling Adults. I've actually done a little bit with Mike out there. It's a lot of fun.
A very good show that I say completely objectively.
Oh, yeah. I'm on an episode with another groomsman, Sal Testa, and we try to solve some Scooby-Doo mysteries for charity. It's a lot of fun. Additionally, there's another podcast I hop in from time to time called Render Me This. The whole thing with that is we actually go back and look at cartoons from when we were kids and think about what it would actually be like to live in that world and decide if we want to live in that world ourselves.
That's cool.
It is. I've done a couple episodes. One was over the Yu-Gi-Oh anime and one on the Scooby-Doo movie, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
Oh, classic.
Which is a lot of fun because that's the first one where the monsters are real.
Yes. Wild. That's good stuff. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to check it out, it's called Render Me This. Anywhere podcasts are played, you can find it.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, thank you again so much for joining. Listeners, thank you for listening. And until next time, I'll pursue you later. God, the stakes are high. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you're all caught up, you can't get enough of the show, and you need more TNO in your life, there's a couple different things that you can do. First, you can support the show on Patreon, thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, and you'll get access to a bunch of bonus content. Bonus episodes, director's commentary, access to my notes, monthly live streams, and more. You can also follow the show on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We also have a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian, and we have a Discord that you get access to by being a Patreon supporter. Speaking of Patreon support, I want to give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Lauda Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Natanya Page, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tuff Beifong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Griffin Dork, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't I See We Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Mooney B, Boney Pony, Harlan Christ, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Aidan Lippold, Josh Sayer, Percy Blue, Josh Wilkie, Martin Anvik, Abby Ryan, Josh Clements, Angela MF, Mary Baumgartner, Shannon Yvonne Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, Finn TZ, Ribbon Monstrosity, Samantha McNamara, Tate Sasson, ML Oscar Thomason, Roxas 1912, Rafaela, Ashton Gabrielson, and Cara Maren. If you want to help out the show non-monetarily, spreading it via word of mouth helps so much. Whether you reach out to someone directly, or you post about it on social media, or you leave a rating and review on whatever podcast app you use. Spotify has ratings now. You could give us 5 stars there. Whatever you decide to do, it would help the show out. And if you do any of these things, I would very much appreciate it. But I just appreciate you listening to this episode. And I hope you tune in to our next episode, which will also be with Stephen Parra, where we will finish chapter 19 and do all of chapter 20. And until then, I hope you have a happy holidays, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, or in a couple of seconds if you are just marathoning through the show after the fact. But until that time, I'll see you later. So this is a very special edition of ASMR Mike, because I'm recording this one from my sister's closet. So I'm currently home in Houston, Texas for Christmas with my family, and I'm in my sister's bedroom because she is not here right now. What's interesting is that we moved to Texas after I was in 8th grade. My sister is 4 years older than me. She had just finished high school. So she was going off to college like right after we moved. So she never like truly lived in this house, would just come back for holidays and stuff like that. And I don't know how this worked out, but my sister got the bigger room, which doesn't make sense. Yes, she's older and she had the bigger room in our previous house in New Jersey, but I don't know why I never fought for the bigger room. I should have fought for the bigger room, and I don't understand why that never took place. It never made sense to me. My room here is cool. It does have the guest room adjoining to it, so I would have cool like slumber parties and stuff with my friends, but in retrospect, I wonder if I should have fought for the bigger room. Anyway, thank you for listening. It's been a minute, and I've been ASMR Mike.